Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. We're looking today at a policy announcement that really sends a clear message to the pharmaceutical industry. It's all about where they have to produce their patented drugs.
Yeah.
Our discussion is going to focus on the immediate market reactions we're seeing and, the expected fallout.
Right. The heart of it is this new levy, a really steep one. We're talking 100% on imported, branded, and patented drugs, and it's set to kick in October 1st, 2025. So the whole idea is basically to force companies, foreign or domestic, to build plants here in the U.S.
Wow. Okay. 100% levy. That's effectively doubling the cost for those specific imported drugs overnight. That's not just tweaking things. That completely changes the game for anyone relying on overseas manufacturing for these products.
It absolutely does. And the rule itself, it's designed as this very strong incentive. That 100% tariff hits unless the company importing the drug is actively building a U.S. plant. So if they can show construction is underway or if they're literally, breaking ground, they get an exemption. It makes building here non-negotiable almost.
Okay, and there's a really important carve-out here for everyone listening. You need to keep this in mind because it affects pricing straight away. Generic drugs, they are completely excluded from this new tariff. Zero pressure on them from this policy.
That's a huge point. That exclusion for generics is critical, and we'll definitely come back to why that gives them such an edge. But first, let's look at where the money seems to be flowing right now. I mean, when you mandate urgent, big construction projects like this, you automatically create winners in the areas needed to support all that building activity.
Okay, yeah, let's start there. Looking at the industrial side first. The analysis suggests some immediate positive reactions for companies tied into U.S. manufacturing infrastructure. It makes sense. That tight deadline, needing plants online before October 2025, means drug makers have to rush to build here to get that tariff exemption, and they'll likely pay up to get it done fast.
Exactly, and this creates this sudden high demand in a few specific areas. First up are the companies providing the equipment and tools. The stuff needed to actually build and run these plants. Building a pharma facility, it's not like a standard warehouse. It needs very specialized, highly regulated gear. Think clean rooms, fancy sensors, complex bioreactors, that kind of thing.
Right. So not just your average general contractor supply house. We're talking about the firms making those really complex, high-tech components.
Precisely. So companies like Thermo Fisher Scientific, that's ticker TMO, and Danaher, ticker DHR, they make the high-margin, specialized equipment that suddenly, basically every pharma company that imports needs now to get their U.S. plants going, their order books. They should see a pretty immediate boost just driven by this policy deadline.
Okay, that deadline, October 2025, that puts a ton of pressure on just getting things done quickly.
Yeah.
So who's actually going to build these huge, complicated facilities in, less than a year?
Well, that takes us right to the second group of infrastructure winners. These are the firms specializing in the engineering and build-out. It's a direct result of forcing all this construction. Like you said, the clock's ticking. And the penalty for being late, that 100% tariff, is so severe. Drug makers have to hire the best, most experienced firms they can find, and fast.
So who's seen as being in that key position?
The analysis points specifically to Fluor, ticker 5FLR, and Jacobs, ticker $. These are companies with the engineering know-how and, crucially, the scale to manage these massive multi-billion-dollar projects under really tight time pressure. They're basically selling the solution to avoid the tariff, which gives them, pretty strong pricing power right now.
Okay, so the engineers and the equipment guys are benefiting from the sort of supply side of this construction push. But let's shift over to the drug makers themselves.
Yeah.
This policy seems to create a real structural edge for certain pharma companies, the ones that already have most of their manufacturing set up here in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. This policy, instantly tilts the playing field towards U.S.-made branded drugs. Why? Because their imported competitors suddenly face that 100% tariff. It could double their cost or force them into this frantic building phase.
So the companies already making drugs here get a kind of free pass, competitively speaking.
Pretty much, yeah. The analysis points to winners among the big U.S.-based big pharma companies, the ones with established domestic operations. Think innovators like Eli Lilly, ticker LLY, and Merck, ticker MRK. They stand to benefit quite a bit just because of how they're already set up. Their U.S.-made brands keep their pricing, while rivals importing similar drugs face this sudden crisis. That could mean more pricing power for them, maybe even gaining market share.
That makes a lot of sense. They avoid spending billions on emergency construction just to dodge a tariff while their competitors are scrambling. Now let's circle back to that generics exclusion you mentioned earlier, because that seems like a really big deal in the farm market dynamics.
It really is. Generics manufacturers, they're explicitly carved out. No new tariff for them. This preserves, and you could argue it even enhances, their cost advantage compared to imported brand name drugs. Just think about the scenario this creates for, say, a hospital or pharmacy benefit manager.
Right. If the brand name drug is imported, its price could effectively double because of the tariff. But if there's a generic version available, it doesn't face any of that tariff pressure at all.
Exactly. The cost difference just becomes enormous overnight. This protects and really empowers the large generics makers. Companies like Teva, that's ticker TEVO, and Viatris, ticker VTRS. If a health system is trying to keep costs down, the financial push to pick the tariff-free generic over an imported brand that might have just doubled in price, it becomes overwhelming. It's an immediate structural lift for their whole business model.
Okay, now let's flip the coin. We've talked about who benefits from the capital flow and the pricing shifts, but who ends up footing the bill or facing the pressure from this sudden policy change? The analysis identifies a few groups getting squeezed.
Yeah, the most direct hit, obviously, is on foreign big pharma, the ones who currently rely a lot on importing their patented branded drugs into the U.S. market. That 100% tariff forces them into, well, three pretty bad options. One, start building expensive U.S. plants immediately. Two, just eat the 100% levy, which probably wipes out the profit margins. Or three, raise their list prices dramatically, which likely means losing a lot of market share to domestic competitors or those tariff-free generics.
So they're stuck with this immediate, almost existential pricing problem, especially if their supply chains are complex and can't just be rerouted overnight.
That's exactly the problem. The material highlights a couple of specific examples, companies trading here via ADRs, those American Depository Receipts.
Right. ADRs just let foreign company shares trade on U.S. stock exchanges. So who are we talking about here?
AstraZeneca, ticker AZNN, and GSK, ticker GSK. Their ability to compete effectively in the very profitable U.S. market is directly under threat from this levy, unless they can show serious construction progress by that October 2025 deadline. It puts them under pretty intense financial and operational pressure.
And that pressure doesn't just stop at the manufacturers who import, does it? I mean, the drugs still have to get distributed, and that higher cost has to affect the middlemen.
Precisely. Drug distributors and retail pharmacies are seen as potentially losing out here, too. Their business often runs on pretty thin margins based on the volume and efficiency of moving drugs through the system. So when the cost to acquire some key branded drugs suddenly doubles, and you add potential supply disruptions as manufacturers figure out their building plans, well, that can squeeze their gross margins very quickly.
They're caught in the middle. If the price of a major product they handle suddenly skyrockets, their contracts might not let them pass that entire cost on immediately.
That's correct. This could impact major players like McKesson, ticker MCK, and CVS Health, ticker CVSS. They're sort of caught in the crossfire. You have immediate price hikes on one side and operational chaos as manufacturers scramble on the other. It could lead to some tough contract renegotiations and challenges managing inventory.
Okay, finally, let's talk about who's ultimately on the hook for paying these higher medical costs, the insurance side.
Right. Health insurers and managed care providers. They face a definite risk from this potential brand drug inflation, even if it's temporary until U.S. production ramps up. The worry is that the higher medical costs that could result from these price spikes, if foreign companies pass on the tariff instead of absorbing it, might not be fully covered by the rebates they currently negotiate with drug makers.
So if, say, AZN or GSK doubles the list price of an imported drug because of the tariff, the insurer has to pay that higher price, at least initially, potentially before they can adjust their own premiums to account for it.
Exactly. This could cause an unexpected bump in total cost for payers like UnitedHealth, ticker UNH, and the Cigna Group, ticker CCI. They're essentially hoping that the construction happens fast and generic substitution picks up quickly to minimize the period where these high-cost imported brands are flowing through the system. You see how the speed of those construction winners we talked about directly impacts the risk for these payer groups.
Yeah, it's definitely a connected system. It all seems driven by that single number, 100%. This new tariff lays down a very clear choice: build here or pay double to import patented drugs. The market reaction, as laid out in the analysis, seems to be capital rushing towards U.S. engineering and construction. While importers, distributors, and the folks managing healthcare payments feel the squeeze.
And you really have to think about the sheer difficulty of that timeline, October 1st, 2025. How fast can those engineering and construction winners actually get these complex billion-dollar-plus facilities built and operational? That response speed is probably the single most critical factor to watch, because if that construction lags, the financial pain felt downstream by distributors and payers, well, that's only going to get worse over the next year or so. That urgency is really what makes this whole situation worth following closely as it plays out.
Thank you for joining us for this look at the policy material. We do need to remind you that this discussion reflects the opinion of the author of the material we reviewed. It is not intended as financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy or sell any specific security. Always do your own research.